so much, our audience, that good morning, good evening, good afternoon to whoever you are. My name is Maureen Kalungi. I'm from Uganda. I'm a gender and disability inclusion advocate. I work for National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda, which is an umbrella organization for organizations of persons with disabilities. It's an honor for me to moderate this session of unlocking potential through inclusive sports. As Ken said, many times we forget about this aspect of inclusive sports in our inclusive education. So today, we have a well-experienced personnel who's going to discuss with us on how they have been using inclusive sports to see that children with intellectual disability are included. So I'll request Monica to introduce herself before we dive in our conversation. Over to you, Monica.
Great. I'm a little intimidated. I don't know how to come up behind Miss Frizzle, the Magic School Bus, and Dan. That was absolutely amazing. But what we're going to do now is go out onto the playground. And that's where we're going to talk sport and inclusion and how that impacts everything in a child's educational realm. My name is Monica Daniels. I am the president and CEO of Special Olympics Mississippi. I have been in nonprofit world for over 30 years. My journey with that started around education of special needs. My oldest daughter was born profoundly deaf. She received the first pediatric cochlear implant in the state, learned to listen and speak, and went on to graduate from university with a degree in journalism. And from there, I went to our local United Way. And from there was asked to come to Special Olympics Mississippi. So I've been here almost, December will make a decade. And I was drawn here because my entire journey has been around educational inclusion with United Way. It was community impact. And how do we bring communities together and get them to see each other and recognize each other for who they are and what they contribute to the community. And in Special Olympics, building on a community-based model, we are doing that through sports and through inclusive sports. And so that's what we're going to just have a conversation about today.
Thank you so much, Danielle, Monique, for the wonderful introduction. As we dive in today's conversation, my background, I'm a former sitting volleyball player and a committee member of Uganda Para-Volley Association. So I've been part and partial in sports for persons with disability. And I know I've witnessed how it moves from just a competition to nurturing confidence, resilience, and teamwork among children with disabilities. So as we go into our conversation, Daniel, I want to ask you something. How do inclusive sports contribute to the physical and emotional development of children with disabilities? May you share with us, please?
Yes, I would love to share with you. And inclusive sports through the movement of Special Olympics is not just for children, and it's not just for children with intellectual disabilities, developmental delays, autism spectrum disorder, and there is no age limit to participate in Special Olympics. So it is sport at its core that uses that as the draw to bring people from all walks of life onto a competitive playing field. So we start as early as 2 with what we call our young athletes programming. And this is dedicated to improving gross and fine motor skills and socialization skills for children 2 to 7. We are in our communities in the form of our Head Start centers and in elementary school settings and in public libraries so that families can come in and check out a backpack of resources free of no charge and bring it home for a week and work at home with their siblings they may have one child that has developmental delays and one child who doesn't. This is helping them as a family unit work on things like that together. So that's bringing inclusion into the home at a very early age, at age 2. And then we are finding when you do things like that at an early age with young athletes program, that the stigma never gets the chance to develop, right? So you have kids in Head Start centers, you have kids at reading programs in the library with various abilities and disabilities alongside each other from the age of 2. So by the time they go to school, that stigma doesn't really get a chance to develop. And that's the dream, right? It's like we recognize everybody and meet everybody as who they are and where they are. And we believe at Special Olympics that a great way to do that is through sports. So our competitive sports starts at 8. And as I said, there is no age limit. So it provides a lifetime opportunity to participate in health, wellness, and socialization through high quality sports. In Mississippi, Special Olympics Mississippi is a nonprofit organization in our state. It's not a state-run agency. We offer 19 sports, and we currently have, outside of teachers, coaches, and regular ed students, we currently have 6,000 athletes. And those are individuals with intellectual disabilities, developmental delays on the autism spectrum. And yes, that does sound like a lot of athletes, and it is for one program. But that's only 10% of this particular population in Mississippi, where there are close to 66,000 individuals identified with these various other needs. So we offer sports, and we are, like I said, we go into the community. We've established another partnership with Boys and Girls Clubs, and we offer competitive sports. We are looking at a model where nonprofits lean into each other instead of continually trying to raise more money, or get more money into a community without really understanding what that community needs. So Boys and Girls Clubs already exist, where we also already exist. These kids are all going to the same school. They may or may not be talking to each other in the hallway because there is that stigma of, I don't really talk to kids in special ed or exceptional ed, and they all have their cliques in the lunchroom. We all know how this works. But what we have started breaking down that barrier with is this partnership with Boys and Girls Clubs, where I wanted it to be a two-way street, and it doesn't cost any more money. Where I'm running my program, they're running their program. We just decided on an agreement where kids can get on the bus, whether they're in exceptional ed or regular ed, and go to a Boys and Girls Club at no cost to the exceptional ed kids. Once they walk in the door, that becomes an inclusive environment, right? So they're already there. Boys and Girls Club already has power hour, tutoring, leadership development. So we are leaning into their programming, not costing anybody more money. Then the club kids, who are the regular ed kids who are getting off the bus, when they come into our local area programming, they are getting the opportunity for competitive sports. And most Boys and Girls Clubs only offer rec sports. So you may say, well, what is the big deal about competitive sports? It's very competitive in very underserved rural Mississippi, around the Mississippi Delta, that has been impoverished forever. And it's very hard to get on a competitive team at your school. So if you come and be what we call a unified partner, then you are playing with our athletes in a competitive sport. This gives everyone the opportunity not just to compete locally, but if they advance, they come to our state level competitions, which are hosted at local universities, which is an eye-opening experience for regular ed and exceptional ed kids. And then we've created a pathway for these athletes to participate on the national stage. So all that is to say, in next June in 2026, we are taking a unified and inclusive basketball team from the Mississippi Delta to compete on the national stage at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. And that all started by just looking at what already exists in a community and then bringing people together through sport.
Wow, thank you so much, Monica, for that innovation or integration of young children with disabilities with those without disability by making them work with the Boys and Girls Club. It's so impressive that we see that there's a lot that is being done when a child with a disability plays with a child without a disability. So, because we have talked a lot about that, now we want to hear the stories, successful stories that you have so far gotten. Now, as the Executive Director of Special Olympics, can you share with us a story about time when inclusive sports made a meaningful difference in a child's life? Because we have had a lot of work that you have done.
Yes.
Now we want to
I know. And I'm a storyteller by nature. So yeah, I am a child of the Delta. So that's why that partnership was so important to me, and that it was so done intentionally and not we're coming into a community with answers and this is what needs to happen. It's been so organic in the community. And as a result of that, one particular story that stands out to me is in 2022, we were the only state in the nation that took unified teams made up of boys and girls clubs. One was a unified basketball team, again from Greenwood, Mississippi, and one was a unified cheer team from Yazoo City. And we took silver in the nation. So we beat teams all across the country. So this is not just casually competitive. Special Olympics is high quality competitive sport. So these athletes have to practice, they have to qualify, they have to train, not just their unified partners, but also the athletes, right? So they were playing at the Wild World of Sports venue at Disney World. There were hundreds of people in there, and they gave it their all and took silver in the nation. But two things stuck out to me that year. We had one of our athletes was nonverbal autistic, and his mom was very reluctant to let him go because she didn't get to go with him. They go on their own as part of a delegation, just like if you're part of an Olympic delegation, your parents don't get to go with you, right? So he was with his delegation. At the end of the week, he started talking to his teammates, and it started to just be a couple of words here and there. But then by the end of the week, he was actually more engaging and saying 3 and 4 word sentences, which was mind-blowing to his unified partners who even went to school with him. And they were like, LaMarcus, keep talking, so he kept, and it wasn't like he just became conversant, but it started, right? And the other part of that is the point guard on that team, a student named Dylan, who is a unified partner. So he's a regular ed kid from Greenwood, same school as LaMarcus. They didn't ever talk to each other before, again, because even in schools, we tend to self-segregate around people who are more like us, right? Well, they actually became really good friends. And then Dylan, who had no plans, he had nothing to, he was in 11th grade, didn't know what he was going to do, was thinking about going to work in the local tire factory that was in Greenwood. Well, he ended up catching the eye of people who were there and who were seeing what he was doing. And he got a scholarship to a community college to play basketball. So he went to Meridian Community College for free to play basketball and earned an associate's degree and is not working at the tire factory in Greenwood. So it's not just those individuals with intellectual disabilities, developmental delays, autism that benefit from this program. Both of those young students had life-changing experiences.
Wow, thank you so much. In fact, in that conversation, your story, I just learned something that sports foster independence. Like
yes.
it fosters independence. I pictured when that parent was releasing that child to go alone and play with others. Most of the times, our parents, because I also have a disability, kind of try to see that we don't move away from them. They feel like they are the only security for us. So
Yeah.
I say now sports is also a foster for independence. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes.
Maybe now we want to maybe we want to know, apart from fostering independence, in what ways can inclusive sports foster social skills and friendship across the diverse abilities?
Right. And I think, that's been woven into this entire interview, right? Of what we've been talking about and how we use sports at its core. And for those on this call or at this conference who may not know how Special Olympics was started, or that Special Olympics is a global movement. So there are over 7 million athletes globally. We are all over the world, and we are an inclusive health organization. We were started by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, so John F. Kennedy's sister. And Eunice Kennedy Shriver started Special Olympics in their backyard because she wanted their sister Rose Kennedy to have access to sports. And a history of the Kennedy family, if anyone is vaguely familiar, they were a hugely competitive family and they played so many sports together. And Eunice noticed that her sister had an intellectual disability, Rose, was being left out. So she started seeking out and inviting individuals to their home to learn to swim. And then it became to play softball. And then it became to learn croquet. And then she reached out to the Parks and Rec. And then in 1967, there were enough athletes to host the very first national games at Soldier Field in Chicago with 600 people participating. All of that started because Eunice Kennedy wanted her sister to be included. So even within families, we have to look at and consider how a family who there may be a sibling who has a certain type of different ability or disability, and the social exclusion can exist even within your family, right? So back to when parents can walk into a public library and check out a backpack and go into the safety of their home and go through resource materials, it builds the confidence within the family dynamic. Fast forward to how that helps in the community. Again, it's when they come together on playing fields, bocce courts, tennis courts, basketball courts, the stigmas organically break down, because in that moment when you're concentrating on quality sports, so we're not talking about spreading the basketball court and letting the kid with Down syndrome keep shooting until they make a free throw. No, you're talking about playing the game as it is meant to be played. There becomes a mutual respect on the field. That translates, as I shared with you about the two kids, the nonverbal autistic kid, LaMarcus, and the regular ed kid, point guard, Dylan, went to the same high school at Greenwood High School. And I talked to Dylan when we were at the games, and he literally said to me, I didn't know who LaMarcus was. I had no idea. He's like, now he's my best friend. We're going to go hang out at, we're going to, Animal Kingdom together, and he's my buddy, and so I think when we look at the whole of what is needed in education, one, education is for a lifetime, not just while you're in school. It should be for a lifetime, which is why Special Olympics doesn't have an age limit on the end. At that very same USA Games where these two young men were playing basketball, I had a 70-year-old bowler who won bronze in the nation, an athlete, and had never, ever qualified for a Special Olympics event before. Same impact on this man's life. He was 70 years old. He had been a Special Olympic athlete since he was 8. He made friends people were like, they didn't notice that Craig was 70, or if they did, they didn't care. So it's just organically, I keep saying organically because to them, while they're on that field, that's how it happens. But we work very, very, very hard before they even get onto that field to make sure that that's what's going to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you so much. Now, to our viewers and listeners, I think we are picking something from Monica Daniels on how to include children with disabilities. And we may be having teachers online that are watching. You know, in Uganda, we have realized many times children with disabilities are left out when time for sports come in. They are put aside. Now, this is something that is going to help people to learn that it's always good to include children with disabilities, whether at any age, as long as you facilitate on how they can engage with the others. Thank you so much, Monica, for that. I want us to go to now, after knowing each and everything, now we want to know how do inclusive sports support broader education and community integration goals? Because we have education and then community. How does it do it?
Right. So when I mentioned that we are a global program, we are, and we are also not just on sports playing fields. So we have a program that is an arm of Special Olympics that we call Unified Champion Schools. So when we work with schools and we go into the school and recruit a principal and maybe one teacher who wants to be that champion in that school, to provide whole school engagement, to provide inclusive youth leadership, which is not, if some of you are familiar with Best Buddies, which is where all the honor roll kids go hang out in the special ed class on their break and just, sit by them. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a school sanctioned club, like Key Club, like any other club, like a Rotary club, like Youth Rotary, like whatever is in the school. This is a recognized club that is made up of kids in exceptional ed and regular ed, giving them a school-wide voice, both sets, both populations. We are currently in about 120 public schools in Mississippi. In the United States, this program of going inside of the school and making sure they do things that hasn't occurred to them, like unified PE. Just make your regular ed and exceptional ed kids can take PE together. So let's start there. Let's form this club. Let's form a competitive sports team, and then come over outside of the school day to the local programming of Special Olympics. So nationally, we are in about 10,000 schools. Mississippi is in about 120. So again, it's knowing that you need to be where the students are. And 8 hours a day, they are in school. So if we can work and elevate voices during the school day, goes all the way back to the very first question that we talked about. When they get out of school and they go to their library or they go to their Boys and Girls Club, they already know each other. They are very comfortable with each other. So then if they see themselves, they run into each other at the grocery store or at a football game at their school, they're more likely to engage than to ignore.
Wow, thank you so much, Monica. Thank you so much. You know, there's a lot that we are learning from this conversation. That if we give an opportunity to children with disabilities to engage, there is that confidence, there is that free that these children get, and also they have a choice either to engage or not, because we have given them an opportunity. Thank you so much. Because I'm seeing we want to give an opportunity to our audience, but before, I want to know, after sharing whatever we have shared, after sharing the opportunities and the benefits and how we integrate children with disability, how inclusive sports integrate education and the community. Now we want to know, what are the major challenges do children with disability face while participating in sports?
So I would say the biggest hurdle for them would be within the school day, right? So they're most likely not ever going to be chosen or to be on the junior varsity team or anything like that. So that is an issue. That is why we feel so strongly about supporting schools and being inside those schools that we deem and become unified champion schools, and starting with something just as basic as unified PE, which is not competitive, right? It's just putting people together to show that you can do these activities together. And then there's just the barrier of people knowing that Special Olympics exists. To say that I just said we're a global movement and we are all over the world, and we are. Just last week, I got a phone call from a mother whose son just graduated high school in 21 in exceptional ed program. And she said, I don't even know what Special Olympics is, but I just got so scared that now that my son just graduated at 21, he doesn't have anything to do. And she just found us. Some of the hurdle is we're so busy doing the work. How do we let people know that we are here? And I said, well, fill out this form and he can meet us Tuesday night for a unified basketball game with a preparatory school and our capital area Boys and Girls Clubs. And he came out. He was very nervous. He said he wasn't going to play. Then he put on a jersey. Then he sat on the bench. Mm-hmm. And then the second half of the game started. He raised his hand and he went on the court. He never his mother came and sat beside me in tears. And she said, I didn't even know you were here. So trying to get the word out, things like this, letting people know who we are and what we do. And then a lot of times, if we just set it up right and do what we did for this, then the barriers break down themselves.
Thank you so much. In fact, in your conversation, it reminded me when I just discovered that there are sports for people with disabilities in general. In my entire life, I didn't know, and I was this girl who used to like sports so much, but I didn't know that even us with people with disability could play, until when I just got to know it when I was at university. So lack of awareness is still there, which we need to continue doing as advocates and activists to see that our children with disability are included, because it's so good. We have seen the benefits of it. Then I want to know, after knowing the challenges and everything, I want to know, what role do coaches and trainer play in creating accessible and welcoming environment?
Right. So when we talked about how everything happens so organically on these basketball courts and these football fields and these cheer teams and these tennis courts, and then, I had to back up and say that's because we work so hard to make that happen organically. And that's due to our coaches and our trainers and our volunteers. So when I mentioned we serve 6,000 athletes, we are a very small staff. We only have 6 full-time staff members serving the entire state of Mississippi. We have over 8,000 volunteers. We have certified coaches. We have unified partners who are the regular ed kids. We have teachers in schools who act as liaisons. If we did not have that grassroots from the local community up to where we offer state competitions and national competitions at no cost whatsoever to any athlete, But if we didn't have that component of those coaches and those teachers and those trainers and those unified partners, we wouldn't have that organic happening on the competitive playing fields. So that we would not exist without people like that.
Hey, thank you so much. We have a lot of questions, but we are going to, people are asking. They're so interested in our conversation. Before I go to the chat to read the conversations that are the questions and comments that are there, I want to give you to ask you this final question so that we get to know from you. Because I also got a question from the audience, which is related to this. How can NGOs, schools, and government collaborate to promote and expand inclusive sports access?
Well, how they can do that is to just plug into the program, right? So currently in the United States, at the moment, at a state level, so I'll start small, at a state level in Mississippi, we get some state level funding. Not a lot, but we get it, and it comes through the Department of Mental Health. Okay, and so that helps us. We are also sub-recipients of federal dollars that comes from Special Olympics North America to programs that support our programming in schools. And we didn't even get to touch on our inclusive health programming, where when I'm talking about all of these events that are happening when athletes show up, we offer free health screenings. And that is through some national funding through the CDC and through a partnership that we have globally with the Golisano Foundation. So that is currently how these organizations are helping support us. But the vast majority of the dollars raised to support Special Olympics Mississippi are private, individual, corporate donors. We are fundraising nonstop all the time to make sure that the quality stays there and that we can grow the program.
Wow, wow, wow. I would wish to continue listening to these wonderful thoughts and opinion and ideas that you have and the experience that you're sharing with us, because you have been into this for so long. I have a question for you from an audience person who said, I want to know how to deal with a child who lacks confidence because he or she has been bullied. And also, apart from, he said, also part of the work dealing with parents who don't believe in their children's or the child's ability.
Right. So there is a lot of data out there that these children who are in Unified Champion schools. So I encourage everyone to leave this conference and go to specialolympics.org, and you will see where we are globally, Eurasia, Canada. You will see where we are. Find a program, look it up, see what is happening. And if you want something in your community and you don't see it, ask for it. So what the data bears out is that if children are in a school that has Unified Champion school programming or even has local sports programming, the data is unrefutable that bullying goes down. The other side of that coin is that the kids that are the unified partners, the regular ed kids, we also work with our indigenous population in Mississippi, which is Choctaw tribal schools. They form sports teams, and their unified partners come from the regular education side of the school, but they're the most truant. They're the ones who are in detention most often. And just anecdotally from that school, we are seeing that even those kids who are in regular ed, but they're coming to school more, they're going to detention less, their grades are going up, and the athletes are also coming to school more, they're being bullied less. When you create a wraparound of when kids leave school in the afternoon and go to places in their community that are actively engaged in inclusion, and if you do that around sports, the bullying goes down. Then it really is just eye-opening for parents. It's like seeing is believing. So if they will just trust that process and let their child participate, and I see it all the time, like the mom who just sat down next to me last week in tears. She had no idea her son was ever going to do that. It's just having that small step of faith.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. It has been a pleasure moderating this session with you and having you on the same stage, sharing your experience with us as we are learning. I have one last question from the audience. It's from Henry, who's saying that thank you, Monica, for the insightful discussion. My name is Henry Musau from USIU Africa in Nairobi. We have established inclusive sports through the support of our sports department. Currently, we have 5 disciplines running: sitting, volleyball, showdown, goalball, blind, football, and para taekwondo. My question is, how can universities like ours connect with organizations that can help us access proper training facilities and equipment for inclusive sports?
So,
Secondly, considering the public universities in Kenya often face more challenges than private ones in promoting inclusion, what kind of policies or frameworks do you think should be put in place to better support inclusive sports program in public institutions? Over to you, those 2 questions, and we wind up.
I'm going to go as fast as I can. But once again, go to specialolympics.org. Find a program, look it up where you are in whatever country you are in. We are currently, and it's a beautiful question, because we offer what we call Special Olympic colleges. The vast majority of them are public universities. Again, like I talked about in the Unified Champion School and how you form that model in a school, a K through 12 school, we do it in the university. They form a club. They invite local athletes from the community who live close to that university, or who are in special ed in high school, or who are in accommodation programs in that university, to play what would typically be called intramural sports. But now that we are bringing with and without disabilities together, it's unified sports. Through our grant program that I said we were a subrecipient of funds from the Department of Education, we are able to provide some seed money to these public universities once they establish a club for things like equipment, uniforms, and then we go in and train them on the sport that they want to participate in, and we train the coaches. Once you go and visit specialolympics.org, feel free to come to Special Olympics Mississippi too and see what we're doing. But there's online coaches training that is free. All of the rules for all of the sports offered are online and they're free. Look around. There may be a Special Olympics program in your community that you didn't know, because we don't do a great job of self-promoting because we're actually so busy doing the work.
Thank you so much, Monica, for sharing with us. In fact, a take home that we should include our children with disability. Now, this goes to our listeners, the teachers, the development partners, the academias. They should include children with disabilities in sports, because we have seen it fosters independence, it fosters inclusion, confidence, and also resilience. Thank you so much for sharing. Over to you, Ken. I think we are going to go for.
Are we off? Is Ken kicking us off?
No,
no, you're still on, but it's sound mistaken now. But I'm going to take you guys off.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone. I need to shout out to Dr. Doreen Myrie, who was responsible for getting me here. Loved it.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. Really, really loved what you're talking about. I'm always excited to hear when people use sports beyond just showing competitiveness, but there's a lot more we can do with sports. We grow leaders, we teach life skills, we promote peace, we can do much more.